finally we're on to the last planet, Jupiter. So Jupiter is an adult-minded planet, and his responsibility is to connect us to something greater than ourselves, to put it very simply, okay, and very clearly. We think of Jupiter as being the spiritual planet. The cornerstone, to be spiritual means to be connected to something greater than yourself. You could be connected to something bigger than yourself, which means something can be more important than you in your life. And that's what being spiritual really is. You know, really being spiritual means not being wrapped up in the ego. That's really what it means, to be connected to something bigger than the ego-centric self that's desperately trying to survive, desperately trying to get his needs met, desperately trying to connect so it doesn't feel alone and scary, and so it gets stroked by people in the world. Being spiritual means to be able to step past all that. And that is done when we connect to something greater than ourselves. Okay, greater than our egocentric selves, greater than all of our little needs, all of our little whims, all of our little longings. Okay? That's what being spiritual is. You could have no religion, but embrace something as greater than yourself, and you will behave in a spiritual way. Okay? But you can, you could focus your whole life on a religion, a spiritual path, but if it's all about you, there's no spirituality there. Okay? So this is the spirituality of Jupiter. It's to be connected to something greater than ourselves. So, the moon is the child mind that's craving connection. And then the moon's exalted in Taurus. So, to have that connection, the child mind moon, which has the jiva, the living being, and the ahamkara, the ego, the idea of separate existence, is getting exalted by Venus. So Venus's job is to give the moon what it needs so that it can so the jiva can survive, and so the ego can feel secure enough to function. Okay? So that in its separate existence, it doesn't feel unable. Because again, the ego, the ahamkara, has the idea of separate existence, which makes it unable. And the Venus's job is to create connections, to make deals, and have resources, so that the jiva and the ego can stay. The jiva can stay alive, and the ego can feel safe enough to advance, to make progress. Then Venus is exalted in Jupiter's sign. For what purpose? To develop Jupiter. Okay? To connect to something greater than itself. And then Jupiter exalts Pisces, and it's in Cancer, the sign of the moon, and now finally the child mind is happy. Okay? Finally the child mind is connected to something greater. So, what's interesting is, for that to happen, Venus exalts in Pisces. Venus has to raise up, which means we have something in this world, something we can see with our senses, to see with our Taurus, which is all the senses, okay? That has to be greater than ourselves. A spiritual path, a book, a guru, a teacher, something, a creative movement, an artistic endeavor, seriously, something that's in this world that to us feels more beautiful and more important than the ego. And its need for security, and its need for pampering, and its need for stroking. Okay? What is it? If Venus is good, you're finding that thing in the world. You're able to help find it. But for it to really be found, it comes down to Jupiter. Okay? The fact that Venus is exalted in Pisces, we have to find something in this world that we can see as and connect to as greater than ourselves, as more important than ourselves. It can be a musical movement. It could be an art movement. It could be a medical movement. It could be healing people. It could be astrology. It could be anything except your own gratification and feeling safe, and money so you feel safe and don't feel scared, and attention so that you don't feel alone. You can get all the attention you get. Who cares? But if you're getting it because you're living for something greater than yourselves, the attention is icing on the cake. Doesn't matter. You have the meat of the cake, okay? It has to be something in the world, and Jupiter's job is to take that and give the joy to the child mind, that joy of connection. And in that, we get out of the way of ourselves. Jupiter's a planet that helps us get out of the way of ourselves. Okay? When we have such a great need for security, such an innate greed for affection and love and stroking and attention, we start screwing it up. We start screwing it up because we need it so much. We're so scared we're not going to get it. So we play the game in a way that we screw it up. Okay? We don't get it that way. By embracing something, pursuing something, feeling something as greater than ourselves and connecting to something greater than ourselves, now Jupiter's functioning. And they say Jupiter overcomes 1,000 ills, because it really does when we're in that mentality. Okay, that's what a good Jupiter's mentality is. There's always something greater than itself, which means the person will make personal sacrifices. They'll live in poverty in order to experience this, to live for this. Okay? They'll be shunned in order to experience this. They'll have people not talk to them. They'll have people talk bad about them because they need to do this. Because there's something is more important than them, more important than their egocentric self. And really think about it. Your egocentric self only exists this lifetime. It doesn't exist next lifetime. Your soul continues its journey, and it brings us some scars with it. But this egocentric self, when the body dies, it's over. It is gone. And there's this ocean of life that you're just a little drop in a river of life moving through time. And you're not even a drop. We're like a molecule in the drop, you know? One little water molecule in that river of life going through time. That's how important the ego is. You know, it doesn't even make a drop of water. Okay? A good Jupiter is what connects us to something greater than ourselves. We get out of our way. The ego starts screwing itself over. It stops doing things in the way that screw things up so it doesn't get what it wants. Okay? It's what gets in the way of us shining as beautiful people. It's what gets in the way of not having beauty. If we embrace something greater than ourselves, and we truly do, it's not about us. And I've seen people fall in love with astrology. I'm going to use astrology as an example because it's something we all can relate to. We're all doing it here, okay? They fall in love with astrology, and it just becomes so important to them. It becomes this big, beautiful thing, you know? It becomes an object of Jupiter, something greater than themselves. It's so much bigger than us, really. And they'll embrace it that way, and they'll soak stuff up, they'll learn stuff, they'll get ideas that function about astrology. They'll find great ways to do things with astrology. They're pursuing astrology from Jupiter. And then there'll be people who become sometimes very successful astrologers. And it's always about how many YouTube views they got, how much money they're making, how much attention they got. And the minute they put a video up and it doesn't do well, the minute they get a thumbs down or a rude comment, it's all about them. Oh no, oh no, oh no. It's all about them. It's all about their security, the money, getting stroked, the good comments, being loved, people wanting to know them, people calling them for readings, giving them attention because they're a good astrologer. It's not even about the astrology. And when another way comes up that they're making money in another way, or getting more attention doing something else, astrology ceases to exist. It's not important to them anymore. And they stop. And if a time comes that they need some more money, then sure, they'll get back into it. Or if they're, they want a little more attention, maybe they'll post some more YouTube videos. It's not about the astrology. It's about the starved ego. Okay? That's not working with a good Jupiter. Okay? And those people won't have this success. Jupiter is capable of the greatest success as well. Okay? It rules joy. It rules wealth. Because when we embrace something greater than ourselves, we get out of our own ways. The ego gets out of its way. If we don't, the ego trips itself up, gets in its way. Okay? Also, if all we are living for is what the ego needs, what the wounded ego needs, then when we don't get that thing, people fall apart. They have a breakdown. They fall apart. There's no point to life. And when they get the thing, happy as a baby in the candy store. Okay? But as soon as they don't get it, life is over. What am I going to do? Nothing to do here. But a person with a good Jupiter is living for something greater than themselves. There's always a part of them living for something greater than themselves. That has something greater than themselves. So when life goes to hell and everything sucks, ideas are coming into their consciousness, creativity is flowing, they find some meaning and purpose in their lives. Okay? And this, even amongst extreme difficulties, where they don't even want to stay alive, their Jupiter still saying, oh look, but this, oh yeah, that's cool. And then they forget about themselves for a few hours. And they get lost in their Jupiters. So it's a very, very important thing to be able to connect our child mind to something greater than ourselves. Because that's ultimately Jupiter's job. Only then is the child mind going to be truly happy. Is the human part of ourselves, which is the moon, going to be truly happy. It could be anything. It's about the attitude. Are we connected to it because we want this from it? Or are we connected to it because we just is bigger than us? And as soon as we connect to something bigger than ourselves, we become bigger people. What's a bigger person? Well, the bigger person is the person who is going to be more forgiving, more charitable, more accepting, basically less ego-centric. That's the bigger person. Okay? So, a good Jupiter is going to help with this. A difficult Jupiter is going to make people struggle with being happy, feeling like there's meaning and purpose to life when the ego's needs are not gratified. And that's a lot of the time. That's the reality of it. Life on Earth, a lot of the time the ego's not going to get gratified. If you've got a tough chart, not only a lot of the time, but a hell of a lot of the time, the ego's not going to get gratified. What then? Jupiter overcomes thousands of ills, it says. Then you have to resort to your Jupiter. If your Jupiter is not good, pretend it's good. Live it out according to the good Avastas. Get in the habit to train your Jupiter to work according to the Avastas. Because the truth is, if we are connected to something greater in life, if we embrace something larger than ourselves, and realize we're just a molecule in that bubble, that little bit of water of one beautiful thing that's flowing through life from generation to generation, century to century, millennium into millennium, when our ego is just here for a brief flash of time. If we embrace something like that, everything's going to get better. We're going to be happier. Okay? People with good Jupiters are in the habit of recognizing this truth. Because this is simply true. Your ego's not all that important. Your ego's needs are really not all that important. Okay? There's something much greater for you to embrace. And embracing that, the pains of the ego are more manageable from that perspective, with that lifeline. Without that lifeline, oh my God, I don't know how anyone can make it, But people do, because we're stubborn about dying, But The lifeline in Jupiter is the lifeline we ultimately want to develop. Okay? It's a huge force in our lives. Okay, so with that said, Jupiter fortunately has a lot of friends. He has Moon, Mars, and Sun as friends. All right? He only has 2 enemies, Mercury and Venus. Now the problem is, okay, let's just do the math. Okay, sign-wise, Jupiter can be delighted in Cancer, Leo, Scorpio, and Aries. That's 4 signs. Okay? Then it can be proud in Sagittarius and Cancer, which we've already counted. So it's good in 5 signs. That's a lot of signs. Okay? But it's troubled in Virgo, Gemini, Taurus, and Libra, 4 signs, even though it has less enemies. The fact that its enemies each rule 2 signs, where the Sun and Moon each rule only 1, that if we don't include its proud signs, Jupiter is delighted only in 4 signs. Signs of Mars, 2 signs of Mars, Sun sign, and Moon sign, 4 signs. And it's starved in 4 signs. So if you don't consider its Mula-Trikona sign, which is Sagittarius, part of Sagittarius, the times that Jupiter is star delighted by sign is 50-50. Okay? Now when it comes to aspect and conjunction, we have Moon, 1 out of 12 chart aspects, 1 out of 12 charts conjuncts. That's 2 out of 12 charts. Sun, 2 out of 12 charts will conjunct or aspect, although the conjunction has some agitation to it, so it's not as great. And then Mars will conjunct it or aspect it in 4 out of 12 charts. So that's 4, 5, 6, 8 out of 12 charts. So it's going to get some delight from a friend. Okay? By an aspect or conjunction. And Venus and Mercury can starve it when it's aspected or joined. So that's 2 times each. So 4 out of 12 charts. So twice as often Jupiter is going to be delighted by aspect or conjunction as it's going to be starved. Yay. So what this means is the human beings have a remarkable capacity to embrace something greater than themselves. And it's actually unusual. Not terribly unusual. It's less common to not be able to do so at all. To only be able to live for oneself is not common. Okay? Which means for Jupiter to only be starved with no delight, not common. Okay, with mostly starvation, hardly any delight, not common. Okay? But it happened. And that makes it very, very difficult for a person to embrace anything greater than themselves, simply because they haven't practiced it. Okay? They have to pretend that they can. All right? So, we're lucky that Jupiter is such an important planet, but we're lucky as a human race that it has more chances of being delighted than starved. And then we add Mula-Trikona, boom. Now we have another, not 1 out of 12, but little, 2/3 out of 12 charts, because it's Mula-Trikona the first 20 degrees of Sagittarius. Okay? And that doesn't do bad in Pisces, and it doesn't do bad in the last 10 degrees of Sagittarius. So luckily, Jupiter is usually going to have some strength to it. If you see a chart where it has none, that's a person who struggles to find anything more meaningful than their ego needs. Okay? Okay, so lots of great planets delighting it. So, and we've talked about all of them to some degree when we've talked about the planets casting aspects, okay? Now, one of the things that a good Jupiter gives, a good Lajjataya Vashta Jupiter gives, is it gives a sense of purpose. Why? Because when we embrace something, connect to something greater than themselves, we have purpose. When we don't, we don't have a sense of purpose. There's no purpose in gratifying the ego. Okay? There's no purpose in living for the most base things. The lowest life forms do that. We're humans. We're meant to experience more. Okay? So there's no purpose to that. Okay, so a good Jupiter gives a purpose, which means it feels good to be here. It feels worthwhile to be here. It helps the hardships go, yeah, it really sucks, but at least there's this beautiful thing to be a part of, okay, to be connected to. And it's so many different. Some people will be their kids. Some people will be their grandkids. It could be anything. There's no judgment on what it is. It's all about the attitude. Okay? So, Jupiter also is creativity. All right? When we get out of the way, it's natural for creative juices to flow. Okay? We embrace something greater than ourselves. That greater than ourselves thing starts flowing through us. Want to be a good astrologer? Embrace astrology as something greater than yourselves and watch what comes through you. Doing it because you need money and you're scared and you want to make predictions, and watch how stuck you can be. Okay? Alright, so, and of course Jupiter rules joy. There's joy in embracing something, connect something greater than themselves. There's no joy in being self-absorbed in the ego. The opposite of joy is self-absorption. Good Jupiter keeps a person from being self-absorbed. Yes, we need to be contemplative. Left, we have to work things out. But I mean self-absorbed. Poor me, poor me, poor me. I don't get this, I don't get this. Why not me? Etc., etc., etc. And not doing anything creative, anything beautiful. That's what I mean by self-absorbed. Okay? And then, okay, so then the creative juices flow. And the opposite is being self-absorbed. We can't be creative when we're self-absorbed. The best thing people can do that fall into self-absorption is force themselves to do something creative. Eventually the juices will start flowing and they'll feel better. Okay, so the three planets that delight the Jupiter. So first is the Sun. It can do it through aspect, conjunction, or by Jupiter being in Leo. The best obviously is Jupiter in Leo, because then Jupiter is also boosting Leo. Second best is aspect. And last is the conjunction, because in the conjunction, Jupiter also gets a little agitated. Okay, but in the conjunction, Sun's getting a great delight from Jupiter. So it's a totally fine trade-off. A Sun-Jupiter conjunction is a good conjunction. Okay? But again, Sun, it's always best to have the Sun alone, all in all, I would say. Simpler. Okay, so when the Sun is delighting Jupiter, the Sun, the should do, is saying, I should do something bigger than myself. I should do something that is really meaningful and purposeful, because it's not all about my ego. I should have a kingdom that's not about gratifying my ego. Want to see someone's a good king? How much is Sun delighting Jupiter? The more the Sun is delighting Jupiter, the more their kingdom is considering the bigger picture. It's not just about me and my ego gratification. It's about the bigger picture. I got the bigger picture in mind. All the people that will get impacted, the bigger picture. We need to have the Sun delighting Jupiter for anyone we should ever vote for, okay? Or have in rulership, or anyone we should follow, you know? If Sun's not delighting Jupiter, we have to be concerned, all right? Because, or if Jupiter's not delighted strongly, but the Sun's a great one, because then in building their kingdom, they will be embracing, their kingdom will embrace something. Okay, the kingdom will stand for something. Okay, it won't be the kingdom of Joe, it'll be the kingdom of magical healing. You know, if Joe's a doctor, for instance. It's about the healing, it's not about Joe's ego. Okay, so that's what we want to see. And here, so that here the parent mind, Sun, is saying, we should do beautiful, meaningful, purposeful things that are greater than ourselves. Okay? We should consider things beyond ourselves. We should consider the greater truth, the greater meaning of things. That's what Jupiter delighting Sun is doing. Okay? Now, if you have this in your chart, it's because you grew up with examples of people who were building their kingdom on something greater than themselves. There was an element of that there. Okay, their kingdom wasn't all about themselves. Okay, a simple way you can say this in a very basic kingdom, the kingdom is basically for the children and the grandchildren. That's ultimately what the kingdom's for. Okay, we'll see this. It's really interesting. You'll see this in Europe and old countries where it could take decades to build some of these amazing buildings they built, all by hand, no bulldozers, no concrete casting, all chiseling blocks by hand, stacking them up, these remarkable structures. And when a person started building that, they started building it at 30, when they had the wealth and the finances that they inherited, and they start building it. Chances are they're going to die before it's even done. They're not even building it for them. They're building it for something greater than themselves, their family, which means their children and their grandchildren, for their family. Now this can be done in a caring, meaningful way of wanting the family to be safe, secure, and in a position to do good in the world. Or of course it could be done in a very ego-centric way of, oh, I want our family to look good and everyone to see how important we are. It could be done in that way too. How's it being done? Look at Jupiter. Okay? But an example of doing it it's not about me, it's about everyone after who the family can serve and the family's well-being and my children and grandchildren. Now it's about something greater than oneself. Anything we do for our children is greater than ourselves. So people, I know single moms, and they struggle, with never enough money, never enough care, never enough support on a daily basis in their lives. Yet, if they have good Jupiters, as soon as, by good Jupiter also includes a great planet in the sign of Jupiter, when that kid needs them, their problems disappear. There's something bigger in their lives the kids need. And that child actually is what saves them from madness, because it gives them something bigger to focus on that keeps them from falling into self-absorption. Having something bigger to connect to embrace, it keeps us from falling from self-absorption. Because it really seems like it's a razor's edge. We could embrace something and think of something bigger than ourselves, or we can fall into self-absorption. Those are kind of like one of these options we have in life. Okay? And you'll see people do one or the other. Okay? And even when a person's being creative, what they're creating feels bigger and more important to them. When they're truly being creative, they need to be creative. And like being creative, it could be creative in something stupid that doesn't even change the world. It's just that force of creativity coming from Jupiter feels greater than oneself, which means it makes them forget about all their millions of ego needs that are not getting met. Okay? Connects them to something greater, to the natural state of the soul. Sometimes it's just to the natural state of the soul, which is a much greater state than this egocentric, narrow state of self-absorption and wounded ego. Okay? So, Sun Dionys is basically saying this. I need to build a kingdom to where I can be happy and joyous and connect to something greater than myself. Okay? And it's true. Our kingdom needs to revolve around that. Okay? All right. The other planet that can delight Jupiter is the moon. Okay? So the moon is a child mind saying, I need to connect. I really need to feel connected all the time. And the way I can feel connected all the time is through Venus, through a lover. Moon stars Venus. The minute moon stars Venus, it's saying, I can be connected through a lover all the time. Can't happen. Your lover will be moody. Your lover will be unavailable. Your lover will be upset at you. Your lover will fall in love with other people even. Your lover will do all kinds of stuff that makes them unavailable to you. So it's an absolute lie. Moon delighting Venus, or starving Venus, thinking, oh, I can always have connection with a lover, with something on the outside. Can't do it. Okay? But when Moon is looking at Jupiter, aspecting or conjunct Jupiter, or Jupiter's in the sign of the Moon, now the Moon's really doing its job. Now the Moon's not screwing around. That's why Moon Jupiter, one of the best things you can find, okay? In fact, it's so good, even Moon on an angle from Jupiter is Gajikasara Yoga, considered, which gives character qualities, wealth, and success. Just Jupiter on an angle and a Moon from each other, okay? Because the force of Moon and Jupiter is so wonderful, where the Moon is saying, I can always be connected if I embrace something greater than myself. Okay? Something greater than my ego needs. And that's the whole trip of the Moon. It's exalted in Taurus, Venus is exalted in Pisces, and Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. And now we have the connection of constant connection. And the Moon, delighting Jupiter, is like, yeah, I want the constant connection.